a podcast devoted to telling the stories of Ohio's missing loved ones. I am your host, Kelly Hammonds, and this is Chapter 3, The Disappearance of Barbara Frame. Barbara Frame is a missing adult from Zanesville, Ohio. Barbara was last seen at her home on Alice Street on January 30th, 1985. 6 weeks prior to her disappearance, Barbara had gotten a divorce from Jeff Frame. Barbara's children were ages 14, 13, and 7 years old at the time of her disappearance and shielded from many of the details. But now, 33 years later, Barbara Frame's children are still searching for answers. Today I will be joined by Kathy, Barbara's daughter. Kathy was 14 years old when her mom went missing, but she remembers every detail clearly. All right, Kathy, let's start by telling us a little bit about your mom, what kind of a person she was, and did she have any hobbies?
Okay, well, she was a very outgoing person. She just had that outgoing personality. She didn't know a stranger. And she didn't really have time for hobbies. She worked and came home, took care of kids. But she did like to be social and have her friends.
And your mom had 3 children, including you, correct?
Yes.
So just 6 weeks before she disappeared, Barbara got a divorce from Jeff. Can you tell us what your mom's life was like after the divorce?
Well, after the divorce, she had to scramble and find a place for us to live. And she got us an apartment. And she liked the apartment, and things was going well, and she was trying to get her life back on track. She didn't have a very good marriage, so this was a new beginning, and it didn't last long.
And do you know why your mom got a divorce and was making a fresh start?
Yes, he was very violent. There was violence almost every day, and he had threatened to kill her more than once.
Okay, Kathy, can you tell us about the last day that you seen your mom?
Okay, well, it started out in the morning. She got up late for work, which never happens, so she was freaking out. Said she didn't have time to take us to school, so we was going to have to miss school. She didn't have time to take us because she had to get to work. She was already late. So we stayed home, and she went to work. During the day while she was gone, it was bad weather. It was in January. It was snowing. And ice fell off of the roof, slid off of the roof next to the house next door and came crashing through a window. And so she got home. After work, she usually goes over to the pub across the street with her friends, and they'd have one drink, and then they would all go home. And she did that, so she got home about 4:30, told her about the window, so she was going to relay that to the landlord. She decided she was going to get dinner started, and her mom was in the hospital dying, so she was going to go up and visit her, because she didn't have much time left. So she got pots and pans out and was getting ready to make dinner, and her ex came over to the house and said she had an appointment with a lawyer concerning the divorce. She had to go sign papers. So she left. She said, well, I'm going to go. She said, we live close to downtown. So she said, it won't take very long. I'm going to run down there, and that's like five minutes away, driving at the most. I'm going to sign the paper, then I'm going to stop at the store down there and grab some crackers for the chili I'm making for dinner, and I'll be right back. Then she didn't come back.
I noticed online it says your mom received a phone call from the attorney and left right after. So that actually isn't true, and Jeff came to the house to tell Barbara about the supposed appointment with the attorney, correct?
I don't know how the phone call thing got started. I didn't post that he came to the house because that makes him look bad, which, in my opinion, he is bad. But I didn't want to point fingers online just in case it came back that I'm not supposed to do that.
That's
understandable. So I just said that she was contacted about an appointment, and other people assumed it was a phone call.
When your mom didn't return home that night, what did you and your siblings do?
Well, it concerned me because she was running late getting home, because she shouldn't have took that long. After about 3 hours that she was gone, I knew she wasn't coming back. I just knew she wasn't coming back. I made dinner for them, not the chili that they were expecting, because I was not a cook back then. But I fixed them something to eat, and we just did normal stuff and waited and waited and waited. She didn't come back. We went to bed.
Tell us about the next day when you woke up and reported her missing.
Yeah, the next day I got up for school, and she wasn't there. She hadn't come home during the night. I checked all the rooms for her. She wasn't there. So I got everybody up, and we went to school. I came back home from school. The house had been untouched. It didn't look like anybody had been there, which I thought, well, maybe she went to work, and maybe she'll come home at regular time, since I didn't see her yesterday, but I just knew that wasn't the case, but I was hoping. And so her friend stopped by and said that she had talked to the guard outside of where she worked at. They had a traffic cop. And I had to wait 24 hours, and she'd been missing before I could call. So when that time rolled around, I called.
Do you know if Barbara left in her own car or if she rode with Jeff?
Yeah, I never thought to look for that. I didn't know when she left. Did she leave in his car with him? Did she take her own? That just never crossed my mind for whatever reason. And after calling the cops and they came, her car wasn't parked there. So they found it the next day.
And your mom's car was located at the bar across the street from where she worked, correct?
Yeah, but the problem was it was parked all the way in the back of the parking lot of the bar, which she did not park it back there. She parked it along the road. She wouldn't have parked clear back in the back of a parking lot at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Did the police do any kind of testing on the car when it was located?
Did not fingerprint it or anything, and the reason they gave for that is because before they discovered it, my family members, aunts and uncles who were older, was looking around, and they found the car, and they were all over it and got their fingerprints all over it, so the cops said that would ruin everything. They looked in the trunk and everything. They was messing around with the car back there before the cops got to it. So nothing was done to check the car.
At this time, did you have any suspicions on what could have happened to your mom?
Yes, I did. I had suspicions about 3 hours after she didn't come back.
At that time, did the police have any theories that they spoke with you or your family about?
No, when I called them, they came, they interviewed me, they took us to the police station and talked to us some more, and then called family members to come and get us. They never discussed what they thought happened. And when they put a detective on the case, he dealt with the adults, which kids were all underage, so he dealt with the adults. And, of course, they didn't really know anything, not much. But that's who he dealt with, talked to, and being underage, I was at a disadvantage of not knowing things that were going on.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about Jeff. You mentioned your mom was physically abused by him. Do you know if Barbara ever reported any of the abuse to the police?
I don't believe she did. I don't know for a fact, but not that I know of.
After the divorce, did Barbara still communicate with Jeff?
Yes, because we lived only a block away. We could see his house from where we lived if we went out the back door. And he would come over every day and try to get her to come back. He was stalking her. He would come over. If she wasn't home, he'd ask me 50 questions. Where did she go? What time did she say she'd be back? Who did she leave with? And he would just ask a whole bunch of questions, and he was just keeping track of her every move. So, yes, he was around a lot.
In our last conversation, you mentioned Jeff began harassing your family members after your mom went missing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I didn't witness any of it, but they had said things like he followed them around in stores. He went to one of them's house at night when her husband was working the night shift and harassed her, and he just did things like that.
Did your aunts and uncles have any theories as to why Jeff was doing this to them?
They didn't really say, but it was because they were looking for her, and he evidently didn't want her found. And they, of course, accused him, and he didn't like that.
Do you know any details about what Jeff told police when he was questioned?
Well, they said they questioned him, but I don't know what all they asked him, but he pretty much denied knowing anything about where she was.
And he was asked to take a polygraph, correct?
Yes, he did that twice, and he got inconclusive both times.
Since Barbara disappeared, has Jeff been in any trouble that you are aware of?
Oh, yes, he's been to prison several times, but not for anything like that, for drugs and stealing and stuff like that. He's been in a lot of trouble.
At any point in time, did you think your mom could have just walked away?
No, I don't think so. For one, her mother was in the hospital dying. All of her family was in town. Some of them was in town from Germany, was in the service. Everybody was in, and they were expecting her to die any day. No, she wouldn't have left. And she wouldn't have left her kids, and she definitely, even if she felt threatened and had to leave her kids, she wouldn't have went 33 years without telling anybody.
What do you think needs to be done to get answers on your mom's disappearance?
Well, there's people that know things. People need to talk. I mean, that's the only way it's going to get solved. People need to talk. There needs to be proof. There needs to be a body. And somebody has to know where that is. People are afraid, though.
Do you have a Facebook page or any vigils you have had for your mom that you would like to tell us about?
Yes, I do have a Facebook group set up, and anything that we do or anything that we find out, I post it in there. And we've had vigils about once a year we do. Most of them's been in January around the time she was missing, but it's really too cold for them then, so we did this year we did it here in July around her birthday.
If by some chance your mom is out there listening, what would you say to her?
Well, I would want her to let us know where she is, if she's okay or whatever, because we need closure. We don't have that.
If your mom was a victim of foul play, what would you say to the person responsible?
That it's time to come forward and put an end to this.
We will continue Barbara's story now by speaking with Lily. Lily is a private investigator that has been working closely with Barbara's children and trying to find answers. Lily, let's start by you telling us how you got involved.
I was asked by somebody from that had lived in this town that moved to Arizona about 20 years ago. They grew up in this town and they knew Barbara, and I had retired from being a hearing officer and started being a private investigator, and I was asked to take on this case or asked to look at it. So then I reached out to Kathy and asked her a few questions about it, and we had decided to go ahead and open an investigation. But we did, when we started, I started working on the case in, I believe it was August of 2014, and we just started out with an awareness event and got the word out because nothing had been done on the case all of these years. There had never been any action at all. The case remains open and unsolved, but there was nothing going on with the police department and Barbara's case.
And what did you find out about the original investigation into Barbara's disappearance, including any tips?
Okay. If I can go back to when her ex-husband was stalking her, going to the house every day, wanting to know where she was at, who she was with. When Barbara disappeared, he no longer did that. That stopped. Excuse me. That stopped immediately. He just quit coming over looking for her. And on the polygraph test, he did take 2 of them. I have signed notarized affidavits from an individual that said that he came to him asking for drugs that would help him to mess up the polygraph test. And so he did give him the drugs that interfered with the polygraph test. But nothing came about because the results of the polygraph test really was not submissive in court anyway. But that was the end of any investigations or anything that the police department did at that time. At the time, they did minimal investigations on it because of lack of knowledge, lack of technology and all of that. So they did entertain psychics, and the psychics gave a lot of reports, and they were in the newspaper back in the 80s. So that really kind of messed up a lot of things years later because people that were calling in with tips was getting them confused with the psychic's reports and reality. And so a lot of the tips that we got, we did follow up. We followed up on every tip that we received, probably over 100 and some. And we followed up with every one of them. But then once it was verified of the stories that the psychics presented, then we had to sort out fact from fiction. So it's been challenging because we're not sure if some of the tips that we got were people that had remembered what was in the newspaper back then versus what they really knew had happened. So that caused me to go and literally investigate and interview individuals. We did receive 20 signed, notarized affidavits of things that happened. And these people back then were young and vibrant and threatening, and it was a very scary time back then because people was afraid to come forward. But now they're older and getting closer to dying, and many of those people that knew a lot back then are wanting to see closure. So I think that I can result that to the signed, notarized affidavits that I have.
A signed affidavit from someone claiming to have given Jeff drugs to pass the polygraph seems like something police would want to investigate further.
Well, this individual that signed this affidavit did state that he would testify in court. I did tell him I was giving this information to the FBI to give him the opportunity to recant his statement, just in case he might be, just maybe one of those people that just wanted to participate, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So he said, no, absolutely, this is exactly what happened. And the guy that was with him at the time, he had called me on the phone like 6 months before, because he had seen Barbara's picture posted in a laundromat, and he had called and said that he knew about this. So 2 months before I found this other guy, the first guy had died, but when I met the second guy, he told me that him and this other guy was together when Jeff came and asked for the drugs. Yes, I did go to the police department with all of my information, and they don't want anything. They don't want to see anything that I have. They don't want to hear anything. They don't want to have any part of this.
I know it's hard to sort out the good from the bad tips, but I feel any tips means people are talking about Barbara. Did the police have any active tips coming in?
They had stopped, they left the case open, but they stopped the investigation within a year after Barbara came up missing. There have been people that have called the police department when we started this investigation and saying that they had tips, and they were told to call me. And I don't work with the police department. I'm a private investigator. And when they called me, they said that the police department told them to call me and give me this information. So I don't know where their standpoint is on this case. Barbara is the only missing female in Muskingum County. There's one missing male and one missing female. The missing male is in the jurisdiction of the sheriff's department, and Barbara is in the jurisdiction of the city police department. But they have not received anything. I don't know if they've received anything because there's no communication. There's no participation. When we have events, they don't show up. They don't give any news media attention. They just basically told me more than once to not come to their office.
It seems very odd to me that police would tell people to call you with the tips. I have never heard that in any other case I have.
Exactly. I have 2 women that called me. They said that they did talk to the police department. I have been told repeatedly not to bring anything to Barbara Frame's case to the police department. I have been rejected 6 times by the prosecuting attorney's office to present the information that I have. All I'm asking for is for them to look at what I have and investigate it and do their own interviews, verify what I have, and see what they can do on the case. Prosecuting attorney's office has rejected me. I went to the sheriff's department. I know that they don't have jurisdiction. They referred me to the prosecuting attorney's office. I went to a special agent, FBI special agent in Columbus. He referred me to the FBI agent in Cambridge, which is the jurisdiction for FBI in our county, And I was told by them that they would give me 5 minutes of their time on Barbara's case. And I presented a portfolio. I presented everything to them, but I only had 5 minutes to squeeze everything in. And to no avail. I've not heard anything. So the last thing that I have done is presented everything that I have to Washington Department of Justice.
What did the police tell you about Barbara's file?
So when I first took over the case, I went to the police department to introduce myself and to try to work with them, and told them I would like to work with them if they would work with me on this case so that we could give these kids closure. And first visit, they don't have a file. There's no file for me to look at on Barbara Frame's case. The next form of communication was there was a file, but they weren't going to let me see it. Another form of communication, the only thing in the file is just a few papers, but they were able to verify that they did not do any searches on her ex-husband's home to see if Barbara would be there. And there were a lot of tips that he had her there. And I have 3 women that said that they had cleaned up blood in his house, and they signed affidavits. But as far as the law enforcement is concerned, the only thing that they have given me was they did not search, there was no search warrant for his house. And a lady that worked at the newspaper back in the early 80s was one of Barbara's very good friends. I spent an extensive amount of time with her, and she told me when the 3rd investigator on Barbara's case came on the scene, she had contacted her and said, I know that you're a newspaper writer, but do you have anything that, because there's nothing in Barbara's file. And I was just wondering, since you were a newspaper and you covered the stories, do you have anything? And so I have a tendency to believe that they did not have anything anyway, and I believe that they're telling the truth because they didn't do any investigation.
So you had 20 people sign affidavits for you stating that they had information on the disappearance of Barbara Frame. Why didn't these people ever take this information to the police?
They said they did. They even put it in their statement. Not all of them, but some of them. The kicker to this case is that Jeff sought out drugs to ensure he didn't, he passed the polygraph test. That's the kick. That to me, if he was innocent, why would he go to this man and say, I need some drugs because I have to take this polygraph test and I don't want to fail it?
I would like to take the time to thank Kathy and Lily for speaking with me. And now here is my summary and thoughts on the disappearance of Barbara Frame. Barbara was a good person and a great mother that was ready for a fresh start. After an abusive relationship that ended in divorce just 6 weeks before she went missing. Barbara was being stalked by her ex-husband, and her children were being harassed with questions by Jeff on Barbara's whereabouts if he didn't know where she was. Mysteriously, when Barbara went missing, Jeff stopped looking for Barbara. A case that could have and should have been solved years ago seems to have very little investigation. Not one time while speaking with other families with missing loved ones have I heard of law enforcement telling people to call the private investigator with tips. I still can't wrap my head around that one. When there is so little information on Barbara's case in her police file that a detective has to go to the local newspaper for information, there is a problem. Lily, the private investigator in this case, has uncovered several leads, pieces of evidence, and signed affidavits that could be a clue on Barbara's disappearance, but no one will even look at the evidence. Some of the signed affidavits state information such as Jeff buying drugs so he could pass the polygraph, a dying declaration of someone moving Barbara's car for Jeff on the night she disappeared, a woman that claims to have cleaned up blood at Jeff's house, and people claiming to have seen Jeff burning blood-soaked blankets. Some of these people even went to law enforcement with the information, but ultimately nothing was done. Someone needs to at least look at the information Lily has to see if it could lead to answers. Barbara's 3 children have been waiting a long time for answers. Barbara Frame is a missing adult from Zanesville, Ohio. She was last seen on January 30th, 1985. Barbara was 38 years old at the time of her disappearance and would be 72 years old today. She is a white female, approximately 5 foot 7 inches tall and 125 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. If you have any information on the disappearance of Barbara Frame, please contact the Zanesville Police Department at 740-455-0700. I would also like to suggest that you reach out with your tips to Lily, the private investigator, through our Missing in Ohio podcast group page. Lily will then give you all of her contact information so she can speak with you further.
Hi, this is Lori from Missing Person from Ohio. I wanted to give an update on a few cases from this week. And the first one that I wanted to talk about is Michelle Birkin. Michelle was missing from Middletown, Ohio since May of 2017. I was contacted by the family this week and told that her body had been found deceased. They are still investigating right now, and they are still making positive identification, but it seems like they have enough evidence. They've actually charged a suspect with tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse. There has not been a murder charge yet, but my prayers definitely go out to Michelle's family and her 2 daughters and all that knew and loved Michelle. Another case from the Middletown area was Amanda Sundberg. She was missing since October of 2017, and she was actually located this week alive. Reports are indicating that she may have had some criminal problems, and she may have been running from that. And I understand that people get upset when cases like this happen. I also get upset because I hate the wasted resources, and I would rather be spending my time on cases that are true missing person cases. But the other side of that is that I'm very thankful that that someone, not me, was located safe, and that's always our desired outcome. So it's hard for me to get too upset about it, but I do wish that Ohio could strengthen some laws, and I understand that an adult is allowed to leave on their own and that that's their right. I do not agree with the fact that resources can be used to try to help that person who willingly left on their own. Now, a lot goes into that, because how do you determine if they willingly left or if they did not when they're missing? So you have to kind of go out and assume that they are not a willing missing person. So those are a couple updates there. There are still so many missing in that area and surrounding areas. There are quite a few. I've actually posted on the site. You can go out and find it. There are 28 women that I have put on a poster. I'm not saying that they are all connected. I'm saying that the geographic region, the timelines of their disappearances, many of their lifestyles, which included drugs and/or prostitution, it leads me to want to connect them, at least to get some publicity for them, to say, hey, we've got a major issue, and I hope that someone's paying attention. So go out there. You can find their pictures. It's a little overwhelming when you see the graphic, because there are so many faces, and every time I look at that graphic or I work on any of their cases, I just have to remind myself that each and every one of these have a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a grandma, a grandpa, an aunt, an uncle, a child. They're affecting so many lives. So please, spend a little bit of time out there looking at their photos and their cases, and I think it'll be a little bit overwhelming and alarming. I just checked, and that post has already reached 33,000 people. So that always makes me thankful to know that many people are still looking. Now, on that graphic, I just want to state this too. 12 of these individuals have already been found deceased, but their deaths have been suspicious or need to be investigated a little bit further. 16 of them are still missing. So there's my update on a couple of the cases. And one other thing I wanted to talk about is Andrew Chapman. He is a missing young man from Columbus, Ohio. He went missing in December of 2006. So this December will mark 12 years since his family has last seen him. His family is a wonderful, wonderful family, and they have really stepped up to try to keep his face and his name out there. And in their efforts to do that, they're not only focusing on Andrew, but they've invited all of us, community, everyone, to come join them on Saturday, September 22nd. It's going to be at 12:30. We're still finalizing where we're going to be meeting, so you can message me on the page if you're interested in attending. But we are going to go over to an OSU game, and we are going to distribute flyers for missing persons. So that makes me pretty happy. It's exciting to know that we'll have that many people that we could hand a flyer to that may not even be aware that there's so many cases here in our area and in our state. So if you have someone that is missing, or if you just want to come volunteer with us, it's just a group of us getting together. Nothing fancy, but it will get the job done. So I would love for you to join us on Saturday, September the 22nd at 12:30. Thanks so much for following the page, and thanks for sharing the posts that we post, and for truly just for caring about the missing. All of us together can make a difference. I firmly believe that. Thank you.
If you have a missing loved one and would like us to help tell their story, please contact us in one of the many methods listed in the show notes. Missing in Ohio can be found on Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, and many of the other platforms you enjoy. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at missingpersonsinohio@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Missing in Ohio, Chapter 3, The Disappearance of Barbara Frame. Stay tuned next time for Chapter 4, The Disappearance of Megan Lancaster. And don't forget to join us on Saturday, September 22nd on the OSU campus for a flyer distribution in honor of Andrew Chapman.